Best advice for a CISO. Go.
Be a humble and empathetic leader. Hire the right people, build a strong team, and then empower them to make the decisions. What I really mean by that is just being able to connect to your teammates at a personal level and being able to understand what is going on their day-to-day lives, to be able to connect. That will help your team connect with you as a leader at a personal level, and at the same time, they'll bring their best self while working on projects and day-to-day initiatives.
It's time to begin the CISO Series podcast.
Welcome to the CISO Series podcast. My name is David Spark. I am the producer of the CISO Series, and joining me, one of your absolute favorite co-hosts of the CISO Series, that would be Andy Ellis, the operating partner over at YL Ventures. Say hello to the nice audience, Andy.
Hello to the nice audience. But I have to ask, if you're an absolute favorite, does that imply that you could be like a very negative favorite? But when it's absolute, now you're positive and it's a favorite.
I think it's being redundant. I think you're right. Yes. So we'll just say favorite.
You know, as a former math geek or still math geek, it gives me a little more confidence.
But that lets the audience choose, are you the least favorite or their favorite?
Right.
There you go. We're available at CISOseries.com, where you can find many more episodes of this show and our other shows. We have lots of wonderful shows. And in fact, believe this week is when our show Capture the CISO Season 2 is coming out. So please go to Capture the CISO on CISOseries.com and listen to that. Our sponsor for today's episode is Cyera, holistic data security in one cloud platform. And we're going to be talking about just that, data security in the cloud, a little bit later in the show. All right, Andy, this is really day one that we're dropping this of RSA.
Yep.
I will be there. I will have just recorded an episode of B-Sides the 2 days before.
And I'm speaking tomorrow morning.
And you're speaking tomorrow morning, which would be the Wednesday. Let me ask, are you going to do anything differently at this RSA than you have done at any previous RSA?
So I'm probably actually leaving. I haven't booked my flights yet. You know, our listeners know we record these well in advance. I'm probably actually leaving either Wednesday night or Thursday morning. I'm not sticking around until Friday. I just don't know that I can justify staying at RSA for as long as I have in the past.
There's just so many people I run into, and I've had in a situation where, and it's just kind of a wonderful situation where I have to book more time between meetings because of the sheer number of people I run into as I walk from one to the next, which is awesome because you go to this event enough, you run into enough people, and it's wonderful. And if this is your first one, going to start making a lot of friends, so you have this wonderful experience as well.
Yeah, and if you want a great place to run into people and have fantastic food, and they're closed tomorrow, so you can't go on Wednesday, at least I believe they're closed tomorrow, is Wise & Sons Deli. That's part of the Contemporary Jewish Museum. Fantastic pastrami. You can sit outdoors, especially if the weather's nice, and you'll run into a lot of folks there. Highly recommend it.
You'd be jealous of this. So years ago when I was living in San Francisco, a few of the delis that are very Jewish-style delis that sell pastrami and corned beef, they had the owners of the deli. They had a panel of deli owners in San Francisco, and they had tons of samples out. I know. It was as awesome as, and they talked about the business of owning a deli, running a deli, the difficulty. Because here's something you do: take a turkey sandwich. Turkey sandwiches has like lettuce and tomato and stuff. It fills out the sandwich, but when you're dealing with corned beef and pastrami, it's pretty much all meat. So those sandwiches are just way more expensive than like a turkey sandwich. So
yes, they are. And the meat takes a lot longer to prepare.
Yeah.
Like getting a really good pastrami is way harder than getting like a roast turkey breast.
And they were also complaining about the distributors and dealing with the distributors, and that sometimes they would like send them like whitefish that like half of it is just bad.
Man.
And they can't complain. And so it just gets not easy to run a deli.
Yeah.
Let's get into our show. Less talk about delis, more talk about cyber.
I'm hungry now.
Although, yes, I'm thinking about that night. It was pretty awesome. Just eating corned beef and pastrami samples. It was great. Our guest for today's show, very excited to have him on, a fan of the show, and I'm thrilled that we can now have him on the show. He's the executive director and CISO over at SMBC Capital Markets, none other than Amir Niazi. Amir, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much, David, for having me on the show. I'm excited and thrilled to be here.
Where can we cut costs?
No one wants to experience budget cuts, but you've got to be prepared and have a plan for what can get cut. This topic came up on the cybersecurity subreddit, and people notice a bit of recency bias with organizations cutting budgets when they go years without a major incident, only to throw money at cybersecurity after a major breach. So how do we connect with the business to try to prevent that practice? And when budgets do get reduced, what framework do you use to make those cuts? I will start with you, Andy.
So I think it's really good that this is two questions because they're very different questions. The first one is you should actually recognize this is a natural and reasonable thing. Security in most companies is a luxury, right? Compliance is the must-have. The security above and beyond it, that's a luxury. So when you have good security, often means that you're living in rich times. Like your company has a lot of money to throw around. Security is getting hit with that budget. It's fantastic. You reduce the breach count. But guess what? Then lean times show up and the company is cutting everywhere. It's not that they're saying, oh, we haven't had any security breaches, let's cut the security team. It's that they're saying, we have to cut everywhere.
Right.
Now, there is a piece of this, which is, look, if you are spending a lot of money and your only demonstrated value is that nobody knows you exist because nothing bad is happening, you're doing a really bad job of marketing. So you should always be marketing what you're doing. So, oh, there's a near miss that was saved by an engineering team's work on a project you asked them to do 2 years ago. You should be celebrating that engineering team very loud and publicly going, oh my God, so-and-so other company just got breached and we didn't because my buddy Amir invested in this 2 years ago.
Yes.
Everybody will remember that you asked Amir. You don't have to say I did. And Amir is going to be like, thank you for defending my budget when it comes around, because people see that I saved the company. So celebrate victories.
Money is being well spent.
Money's being well spent.
All right. So let me pause you on this. I'll get to the second question because I want to go to Amir now. So Amir, we're going to do the two questions separately. Amir, the first question, how to connect with the business to try to prevent that practice. Andy gave a great answer. What would you add to that?
Basically, we want to make sure that when we set our budget at the beginning of the year, we want to make sure that our priorities are laid out based on some sort of a framework, as you requested at the end of the question, some sort of a risk assessment, right? That kind of focuses you to think where you will be spending that kind of money. And when the time comes for cutting budgets or costs, you need to be able to very clearly demonstrate to the business that you've done your risk assessment. Here are your key areas where you want to focus on investing. And this is where you're going to get the highest return on investment. So I think you want to continue to focus on your critical assets, your crown jewels. Those are the things that you will need to continue to protect no matter how bad or good the time is in terms of economy. I think business or the board at the very least will expect you to be able to do that at the minimum.
All right. Amir actually gave a nice combination of the two questions. Andy, I come back to you for the second question regarding when budgets get reduced, what framework do you use to make the cuts?
So I think first you should probably recognize that as a security team, a lot of what you're doing is product support. That why do we do compliance? We do compliance so we can sell a product. As a result, when you have to make cuts, like you're just going back to a product team and saying, here's what we're doing. Like I have done this before where I walk back and I say, oh, you wanted FedRAMP High. You want us to investigate FedRAMP High? Based on these cuts, that's going to be one of the things I'm dealing with. Is that okay that we're putting that on the table? And when the head of products says, no, I need you to keep investigating that. I'm like, okay, here's your other choices. So as much as possible, a framework that lets your customers pick what you cut. So it's not that I'm hiding and trying to figure out what I'm doing. I'm going to come back and say, here's the 20 products I support for you, head of products. I've got to do a 10% headcount cut. So you're going to lose some product support. Which products do you want me to not support? Sometimes you will find you have more money as a result of this, or you're now first at the table when in 6 months, they're like, okay, we found some more money. We're going to go spend it. I would really like you to get this product.
So let me push back with you just a little bit on this.
Yep.
Is a little bit of that of like saying, Well, what do you want to put at risk? It comes a little bit of threatening to is
No, it's not putting things at risk. It's the same thing the engineering teams do. If an engineering team gets told, cut 20% of your headcount, they're going back to the product team and saying, this is what was on the roadmap. Here's what the roadmap is going to look like. I'm just making sure you know what that looks like. And I'm not walking in saying, here are 20 things, pick which one. I'm going to tell you which one I think you should cut because I don't think it provides as much value. But if you want me to keep investing in that, you got to make an argument of what other thing you're giving up. The thing that I think too many CISOs do is they play this game of chicken where they say, I don't want to cut anything and I'm going to pretend the whole world is going to fall. And then at the last minute, I'll cut some stuff, but I have no partners who agree with me that I'm doing less. Because that's what you have, that agreement.
all right. Amir, I want you to make a quick comment to close this out because you're nodding your head all the way through this.
I am actually in full agreement with what Andy just said. You have to be able to look very closely at your tech stack and say, look, what is providing me value the most and where I can just cut and that doesn't have any ROI in my tech stack. And I think that answer can only come from the people who have the technology implemented and managing it and operationalizing it from day-to-day basis. So that would be security team. I absolutely agree with what Andy said.
Would this person be a good fit for the job?
What are some red flags in a cybersecurity job interview? Now, one example that came up on the cybersecurity subreddit, an interview for a senior position where the interviewer spent most of the time asking cloud certification questions rather than focusing on practicality. Now, what does an interviewer only focused on textbook answers tell you? And I'll ask, what other types of interview questions tell you about the role and or the company that say, maybe this is not for me? Amir?
Yeah, so that's a really good question. And I've seen interviewers where they just follow one question after the other, focused on the technical question and answer, and not really get to the essence of an interview and interviewee process.
Not active listening, which is key.
Exactly. Not active listening. And the interview has to be a two-way street. It should not just be interviewer asking questions. It needs to be more of a conversation. And it is your job and responsibility as an interviewer to make the candidate comfortable during the interview process. So focusing on certification-based questions will get you some level of understanding of what the technical competency of the candidate is. But at the end of the day, it has to be a fit both ways. So you must make sure that the candidate you're interviewing is the right fit culturally, skill-wise, and has the capability and the strength to carry on whatever initiatives you have planned for that candidate when he joins the team.
Andy, I throw this to you. What is a clueless interviewer doing? I guess is really what we're looking at.
Oh, so I actually most agree that I think this interviewer probably didn't know enough about what they were interviewing on. And I agree with everything Amir just said, but I'm going to take it in a completely different direction, which is I think the interviewee screwed this one up royally. Like I went and I read the Reddit post, and everybody should go read this post, and you should see the massive opportunity this person missed. Because from the sounds of it, they went through the interview insisting on not giving textbook answers. That when they were asked a textbook question, they were like, well, I'm going to give the practical answer. And then they get corrected about what the textbook answer is. Now, what they should have been doing is said, well, the textbook answer is that you would do something like this, but in my experience, you have to be aware of all of the nuances. Like demonstrate that you know what the book says, you know when to use the book, when not to use the book. When I read their post, I read this as you walked in and you were basically like, I'm smarter than you. You only have a certification, and I'm going to insist on pointing out that your certification is worthless. Well, I don't want you working for me. Even if you are smarter than the people I've got, that attitude, especially given that the title of it was like Cert Bros and Definition Bros are ruining the cybersecurity industry. Like if that's your language, like have a nice day.
Well, this goes into what our other co-host, Mike Johnson, says. This is also the sign of the brilliant jerk, too.
Yeah, absolutely. Like we often talk about the brilliant jerk and how do you like invest the energy to redeem the brilliant jerk that you rely on. You don't work for me. I don't want to invest any energy in redeeming you. But as a listener, here's what I'm going to tell you. If you're a brilliant jerk, stop being a jerk and use this as an opportunity to be like, how do I take somebody who believes they have all the knowledge because they've got a certification, show them that their knowledge is valuable, and also show them that there's more knowledge beyond that I would be a helpful mentor to them or a partner to them. Because that's what you're interviewing for. You're interviewing for the job to come in and up-level your entire organization And you just said your organization has no value.
All right, Amir, I'm going to let you close this out. I'm going to ask you the question of, have you ever hired a brilliant jerk? Have you interviewed brilliant jerks? Can you manage a brilliant jerk? The person that Andy just described, have you dealt with that before?
I've dealt with brilliant jerks in an interview process. I'm lucky enough to not have hired a brilliant jerk so far.
When you've interviewed them and it's clear, like maybe they're trying to prove that they're smarter than you and maybe they think that's a tactic to get them hired, like, oh my God, this guy's so talented, I must have them on my team. Like, is there a way that you coach them like, this is not the way to be approaching me?
I have. I mean, sometimes the candidates will basically ramble on with confidence, might I say, right? They will continue to ramble on, and in order for them to prove to me as a hiring manager that they know it all. My honest feedback towards the end of, and my transparent feedback towards the end of any interview is, if I feel that you're not the right candidate for the job, I will honestly give you that feedback right there and then. So you're not waiting weeks, months, for somebody to call you and say, look, I'm not qualified. And when I give that feedback, it's coming from the heart, and I'm giving that feedback as a mentor to that person, not as a condescending, I don't want to say the word.
We actually walked people out of interviews.
Whoa.
Like, almost everybody on an interview panel was actually allowed to veto a person. And if we vetoed them, we would walk them out. Like, they'd get like one more interview while we'd go get whoever the HR recruiter was or the hiring manager. And then we'd just be like, yeah, we're done. We've already made our decision that you're not the right fit for us. We're not going to waste your time by having you sit through 2 more interviews when we've already decided. And we're not going to waste the time of our people either.
I think that's the best thing you can do for a candidate.
And it gives them real-time feedback that what they did in that interview is what gets them not the job. It's not that there's a better candidate.
Before I go on any further, I do want to tell you about our absolutely spectacular sponsor, and that is Cyera. Now, we all know that data is the largest and fastest growing security attack surface in the world. Every business is using data to collect insights and create new products, but they have to do so without placing the business at risk. Solving data security starts with knowing your data. This is where Cyera's data security platform can help. And by the way, we've talked about this a lot. Once you categorize it, now you can manage it. So here's what Cyera does. Discovers your data attack surface, monitor, detects, and responds to data risk, and helps govern data use. Imagine if your organization's OneDrive was compromised by ransomware. Yikes. Would you know what data was in your OneDrive? Would this trigger a compliance issue? How much would it cost you to outside counsel determine the materiality of this? Oh my God. And this is, by the way, major legal issue if you're not already aware of this. So Cyera delivers the insights you need. It starts with their agentless approach to data discovery, which occurs across any environment, cloud, SaaS, even on premises, making deployment fast and simple. Cyera's classification is based on their own LLM and has an accuracy of 95%. Companies like Paramount Pictures trust Cyera to discover their data, its sensitivity, and who has access to it. To learn more, just go to their website, and I'm going to spell it for you. It's Cyera.io. That's Cyera.io. Go check it out.
It's time to play What's Worse?
It's time to play What's Worse? All right, Amir, I know you know how to play this game. 2 awful scenarios. These are 2 kind of more annoying scenarios, not necessarily horrible. I mean, because technically at the moment they're not horrible, but they could be horrible.
Well, I like these. These are more fun than the horrible sometimes.
I mean, they are horrible. They're both horrible, but they're not like immediately bad.
Yeah, but like the immediate horrible, it's like sometimes you're just like, okay, fine, I could like die in a fire or die in a flood, which do I want to do? Like, it's less exciting than sometimes the annoyingly horrible stuff.
So this comes from someone anonymous. I know who it is, but I can't say who it is.
Do they have a pseudonym yet? We should give them a pseudonym.
No, but maybe we can work on that.
We'll give them the pseudonym after we hear their scenario.
Maybe you could do that. All right. I always make Andy answer first. All right. So A SOC leader, Security Operations Center leader, who does not think to do third-party due diligence on a vendor they are sharing data with during a proof of concept, okay? Just a proof of concept. Or
Happens all the time.
Or a CEO who says security is a priority, but is repeatedly failing phishing simulations. Which one is worse here, Andy?
That is amazing. I love the scenario.
So the nuance of like, what does it mean to be repeatedly failing a phishing simulation? Because the reality is, if I crank up the complexity on the fish, everybody's repeatedly failing them. Like, let's just be very clear.
Yeah, I know. You can always find something. But it's a CEO that's doing it a lot. And again, this is just a proof of concept where they're not doing the due diligence with the third party. So which one's worse here?
Look, God, like, so what's annoying about this one is both of these are real. Neither one are you actually going to deal with in your organization. Like, yes, you have people who do proofs of concept all the time. They don't actually do full due diligence on it. Whatever. We wish they would get better at it. I might actually have this one's annoying. So I'm going to call this one the sock darner. That's my nickname for the person.
Okay.
You're now the sock darner because darn it, I don't like either of these, and one of them is about a sock. God, these are mediocrely bad. This makes it really hard because usually I'm like, how do I convince Amir to agree with me?
Oh, you don't have to go agree with him, Amir.
I know, but I want him to. Like, I don't have a compelling argument for either one is my problem.
By the way, kudos to the person who sent this in.
Yeah, I've never been stumped like this.
I've never seen you stumped like this before, Andy. This is a new one for you.
So for listeners, when you're submitting one, like notice how these are two very different problems, but they're at the comparable level.
Yeah.
What's often makes it easy is you take two very similar problems, you think they're comparable, but they're not. Like it's A or B, and I'm like, I have to pick one. This is like A or 75. Like I have no idea how to pick between these. So I'm gonna actually say the first one is the worst. The SOC leader who's not following the process, because this is a security person, and if they're not willing to follow the process, I'm never gonna get anybody else to follow the process. My CEO who falls for phishing scams, if I absolutely need to, I'm going to reroute all their email to their chief of staff and say, you can approve mail to go to the CEO, but like nothing goes to the CEO unless you have seen it. And this is your problem to deal with. Like I recognize this totally unpalatable, but I just get to joke about it. So I think the first one is absolutely the worst.
All right.
Because my CEO has no access to anything. Like compromise their machine. What do they have on it? Like budgets that nobody follows?
Amir, I throw this to you.
I mean, that's one way to think of this. I definitely agree with you. I think the SOC scenario is the worst one. On the flip side, I think I want to kind of disagree with you respectfully that compromising a CEO through a phishing campaign could, especially somebody who's been repeatedly failing the phishing campaigns, and if he was to click on an actual phishing scenario.
Yeah, I mean, this is a sign it's going to happen. If you're batting 1,000 on your training day, chances are.
As I always say, human error is a symptom of a system in need of redesign. This is the mail server's fault, not the CEO's fault.
That's true. The gateways, the email gateways let that phishing through. Yes, but that's why we have defense in depth. But short answer is, I think I would go with the CEO scenario because that could result.
That being worse. The CEO scenario is worse.
That being worse because that could potentially result in compromise of your entire network, right? If you don't have the right controls in place.
Andy, Amir is correct, by the way.
I don't think Amir's correct on this one, but that's okay.
Why is everyone talking about this now?
What do we mean when we say offensive security today? And by the way, can I just say, I get the idea, but man, has the branding really been screwed up on that term? Roy.
I find this whole conversation pretty offensive.
There you go. That too. Okay. So what the heck does offensive security mean? Does it mean aggressively hacking back? Does it mean red teaming? So Tom Easton at Security Week might have hit the nail on the head by saying the term is, quote, in danger of becoming one of those overused terms that means everything and nothing. So Essen makes the argument offensive security should mean shifting from an, quote, attack of the month mindset and looking at the organizational ecosystem as a whole with the goal of outpacing attackers preemptively. If that's the case, Amir, I throw it to you first. How far outside of traditional red teaming does this take offensive security? So is offensive security, let me just ask, different than red teaming?
I think the term has evolved over time for sure. Knowing red teaming in a traditional sense is, you're basically trying to break into your own network or have a separate red team internally versus the blue team trying to just test your controls on a day in and day out basis. Or you have a red teaming engagement by an external party to come in and do a scope testing. The term offensive security, I think, has evolved to include everything in terms of protecting and defending your network. Basically, from the bad actor's point of view, you want to make sure that you're constantly testing your controls. And if you find any holes, gaping holes there, you're notifying purple team or the blue team to make sure that they put in the proper detective measures in place. I think in today's, and in my opinion, and people I've talked to in the industry, I think offensive security is a blanket term for anything similar to red teaming exercise, right? So it has taken a life of its own, which essentially means you're going to continuously test your controls. And if you look at it from the federal government agency's perspective, I think offensive security they have the ability to fight nation state actors, like you said, attacking back and compromising them. I don't know of any enterprise that actually do that or have the capability and the resources to do that.
All right. Andy, I take this to you. Your take on offensive security, and is it evolving red teaming?
Well, I think people are trying to evolve the term because they like it. It's so sexy. It's like, oh, we're offensive security.
Yeah.
But I'm with Amir on this one, which is, look,
I think it has to just do with body odor, doesn't it?
it could be. I started my career in an organization that did offensive and defensive security. Let's be very clear. Like, that's where I started my career. Our offensive program was go break into other people's stuff. I didn't work on that side of the house. We learned from them, like our defense was informed by our offensive capabilities. But offense meant leave our place and go into somebody else's place and make bad things happen to them. Like, this was the US military. That was fine. We had legal authority to do that because we were the military. As Amir notes, if you're an enterprise, you probably don't have the capability, but you absolutely have zero authority to do this. There is no self-defense argument for hackback or offensive security. You should not be engaged in this unless you are a nation state, period. But what's happened is all these people who want to be sort of associated with the cool hackers, it's like, oh, we can do offensive things, but let's do it legitimately. Like, they want to keep that name. And look, and if you want to say, look, we're threat informed, we're adversary informed, whatever, great. But I'll tell you, when I hear offensive security, like, instant turnoff. Because what I hear is you would like to be a hacker, red team, like doing bad stuff to people, but you also want to get paid legitimately. So you're trying to do a thing. If what you are is a red team or a pen tester, that's what you do.
Are you completely against this term offensive security?
I'm absolutely against this term because I think it confuses things. And what you're actually trying to do is carry the cachet of a nation state offensive team into some other capability.
I'll be honest, I didn't see it as the term offensive is offensive, which I'm getting from you. And I just felt it's way too confusing. It's more my concern, but that's a good point.
Because it's part of the reason that it's confusing is because a lot of folks, and I know I've been one of them, like, anytime somebody said, how do you feel about hackback? And I'm like, it's illegal. Stop doing it. Mm-hmm. There's a very clear, robust line is this is a place where the physical world doesn't translate to cyber. In the physical world, there are offensive actions you can take as part of defense, right? Somebody breaks into your home and pulls a gun on you. You can shoot them in most states in the United States. There's a lot of stuff you can do. Like, your security guards can shoot, detain, and do things that it's okay. You can't do that in the cyber realm because the moment that you reach out past your perimeter, you are no longer engaging in self-defense. Like, I don't care if somebody's launching a DDoS attack against you and you know the machine that is their command and control. The moment you take an action to disable the command and control, that is an offensive action that you do not have any legal justification. I've never found a lawyer who says, I can argue self-defense on that action. It doesn't exist.
That is a really good point about physical world and digital world.
Right. There's a ton of things in the physical world that count as self-defense. But look, if somebody is trying to hurt you in the physical world, like, they're just an adversary. If a computer is trying to hurt you in the cyber world, it might also be an iron lung machine keeping somebody alive. You break it, you kill someone. Like, nobody's going to sign off on that. That's what we have nation states for.
Where does the CISO begin?
We're well into the first wave of LLMs hitting the market and still trying to figure out their implications. While a lot of the primary LLMs from OpenAI, Google, and Anthropic have gotten a lot of coverage, we're also seeing startups offering more focused services on top of them. It's early days, so we're seeing a lot of variety from chatbots to help handle risk assessments to filling out compliance surveys. Quote, slap some AI on it is de rigueur these days. How do you go about evaluating these products? And I don't even know if you are, but I'm going to ask you, Amir, first. Where do you think we'll see the most value? And again, we're talking about these smaller startups. I mean, there's so much investment going on in AI and security. And are these startup products eventually just going to be features to other things right now? Or are they going to be standalones? I mean, I'm asking a lot here, but I think really the bottom line, what I'm asking here is, are you looking at these startup AI tools out there and are you seeing value? Amir?
Yeah, so I can speak from financial services perspective. There are definitely a lot of R&D happening and innovation happening in terms of assessing the tools and to understand what financial use cases where they can provide the most value for us. Specifically in cybersecurity, we've started to look at Microsoft Copilot like a lot of other organizations, but even that is still being assessed in terms of what the risks associated with that may be. Like, does it have the ability to take our internal data and somehow make it available to bad actors out there in the Microsoft Copilot ecosystem, right? So, but one of the most, I think, interesting areas that AI is making it available to the practitioners and users is the increased efficiency it gains in terms of natural language processing techniques. You can use NLP to extract insights from unstructured security data sources such as security reports, incident tickets, threat intelligence feeds, and so on. So if you have the right product implemented, it can really empower your SOC, your security analyst, to free up a lot of their time and automate and provide a lot of true value. But again, there's a lot of advancements happening there, and by no means I'm not an expert in AI by myself, but in order for us to understand what the capabilities of features and tools like this are, it is fundamentally important for us to understand the components of what AI is built on. So the things like transformers, the taxonomy, the tokenization, things like that, you should be able to understand as a security practitioner in order to make informed decisions about any of those tools.
Understand what's under the hood. Andy, how are you looking at these tools? Working at Wild Ventures, I'm assuming you are looking at them.
Yep. Oh, absolutely. Looking at a lot of companies that want to be in this space, some that are in this space. And I think I sort of partition AI into three different categories here, especially around LLMs. So I'm not even talking about other parts of AI. So one is the companies that are fundamentally outsourced body shops transforming themselves with AI. I think that's the place we're seeing the biggest transformation from AI is just think about like slide generation. And for those of you who've never had to build slides, it's a pain in the neck. You hire some designer, and now we have a bunch of AI apps that are like, oh, I'll do your initial slide design for you. I'll be really honest, I don't find they work really nicely for me because I have very particular tastes. But for most people, this is a world better than what they were using and way fast. That's transformative. It's going to drive the SaaS native conversion of companies from running as a corporation that owns its apps and people to one that does it all through SaaS. That's area one. And I think we'll see pieces of that even in the security space. There's a second space, which is existing vendors using AI to augment, right? Where it's, oh, we need to generate remediation instructions because we just had a detection. We'll ask an LLM to generate the remediation instructions for us. And then hopefully we will validate the answer that it gives to make sure it's pointing you at an actual package and not just a hallucinated package that an adversary can go squat on. And I think that's going to be interesting and not transformative, but very valuable. So I don't want to say, here's to have someone say, oh, Andy said this is not transformative, it won't matter. No, every vendor who's out there, if you have humans interacting with your product, that's an opportunity for AI to create better ergonomics for that human. The third area, which I'm more skeptical on, but I think will be the most transformative in the long run, is using AI to sort of completely transform how we're doing security operations, whether it's SOC technicians being replaced by AI agents that will then escalate to a human, whether it's doing vulnerability remediation, orchestration entirely by AI. Here I see a lot of people saying, oh, I've got an idea for this. I think we don't even know what that transformation is going to look like. And it's going to surprise us with who actually ends up leading the way there.
Excellent. Well, that brings us to the very end of our show. I want to thank our guests, Amir Niazi, who is with SMBC Capital Markets. He's the CISO over there. I'm going to let you have the very last word in just a second, but I do also want to thank our wonderful sponsor, Cyera. Remember, their website is cyera.io, CYERA, holistic data security in one cloud platform. Please go check out their website and understand what data you have. Once you classify it, then you can manage it. Andy, as always, thank you so much. Excellent job. Have a phenomenal week during RSA.
Tomorrow, you can't measure risk is actually the talk I am giving. So for those of you who've made it this far and are listening, and I know a lot of you are FAIR advocates, I am going to go tell you why you should stop using FAIR.
It's interesting you say that. There are people who love FAIR, and sounds like people like you who do not love FAIR.
Yep. I think FAIR is a very useful gym exercise. You should use it to exercise your brain, but it is not the skill to take out into the world.
Interesting take. Leave it in the gym, if you will.
Yep.
Amir, any last thoughts? Are you hiring? Give us the lowdown.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we are definitely posting some roles, hopefully in the next couple of months for FY24. And we're looking to bring in some really smart DevSecOps and AppSec people. There's a lot of work happening on the CI/CD pipeline front and maturing our pipelines and containerization.
So I'm assuming reaching out to you via LinkedIn would be a good way if someone falls into that category?
Absolutely. Yeah, for sure.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much, Amir. Thank you very much, Andy. And thank you to our audience. We greatly appreciate your contributions and listening to the CISO Series podcast.
That wraps up another episode. If you haven't subscribed to the podcast, please do. We have lots more shows on our website, CISOseries.com. Please join us on Fridays for our live shows, Super Cyber Friday, our virtual meetup, and Cybersecurity Headlines Week in Review. This show thrives on your input. Go to the Participate menu on our site for plenty of ways to get involved, including recording a question or a comment for the show. If you're interested in sponsoring the podcast, contact David Spark directly at david@cisoseries.com. Thank you for listening to the CISO Series podcast.